that there is no inflation to be seen really in the Eurozone as a whole. In fact, the ECB's published a new set of forecasts recently where they've raised their GDP forecast and they've lowered their inflation forecast for the next 2.5 years. So I don't see any reason to accelerate this unwinding that you were talking about.
Why do you think is inflation so low? We've been talking about the wage puzzle in the UK and the US, but also across Europe. Why do you think wages are not rising faster if economic activity is at a 6-year high?
Because there is still a considerable amount of slack in the labor markets across the Union, perhaps with the exception of Germany, which is very close to full employment. But in other countries, you're still looking at jobless rates that are around between, let's say, 10 and percent plus, and even in the case of Spain, much higher than this. So the bargaining power of wage earners is still extremely weak. That's one factor. And of course, let's not forget also that after a temporary spike in oil prices at the very beginning of this year, we are now looking at a fall in commodity prices in general and oil in particular. That's going to feed into lower headline inflation looking forward. So inflationary pressures are still extremely weak in this current environment.
The added effect on inflation, or the added impact on inflation, would be a higher, or the lack of inflation, I should say, would be a higher exchange rate in terms of the euro dollar. We've seen it creeping up. It's adding on another 0.3% this morning. We're talking to FX forecasters, and they're seeing it at 115, 116 by the end of the year. That's not going to help the inflation outlook, is it?
Absolutely not. And that's precisely why we think that the negative deposit rate that the ECB has at the moment will continue to prevail for the next couple of years. This is a tool to influence the exchange rate, and at the moment, as you rightly said, I mean, the euro is strengthening again. That's not good news as far as inflation prospects are concerned.
It's a really, really tough balancing act for Mario Draghi, though, because he's got to, cater to both the hawks and the doves on the governing council of the ECB, obviously, and he has to acknowledge that the economic recovery in the Eurozone is gaining strength. So what does he do then? At what point does he taper? At what point does he actually hike rates?
Well, our view is as follows. We think that by the second part of this year, probably around September or October, the ECB will communicate to the markets a new calendar, a new schedule as far as this tapering off is concerned, that will reveal that effective at the beginning of 2018, they will somewhat reduce the monthly pace of purchases on the sovereign bond markets, probably from 60 billion at the moment to about 40 billion. And then perhaps even if things continue to go well on the growth side, 20 billion by the second part of 2018 and into 2019. But as you can see, this unwinding is going to be extremely slow, cautious, gradual. All those words will apply. We're not looking at the end of this actual QE program before probably the beginning of 2019, in our opinion.